Okay, I need to do a video on this. Let's go.
For centuries, Black people have been oppressed and demeaned for using AAVE, and this influence is called...
I don't get it. Why is it the assumption that Black people use the, I guess, kind of for like bad language, I guess you could say, of what they call, well, why do they assume that Black people use Ebonics? I don't get that. To me, it's just so weird. And I even hate calling it Ebonics because it's not. It's really just speaking broken English. And I don't get why speaking broken English is somehow supposed to be a part of being Black. It's like everything is being put into the Black category that is bad. You see, like, some people trying to say that, like, basically having issues with the police is a Black issue. Painting Black people as criminals. Painting Black people as if helping, like, criminals has to do with helping Black people. Saying that Black people are demeaned for how they speak their language, as if speaking poorly is their language. Like, everything is associated with bad things having to do with Black people. I kind of find this very annoying because it's like, not everyone has this behavior. As I said, and I've said several times, that, being Black or being white doesn't control how you act, how you talk, the different behaviors you have, the different types of things you do in your life, the different types of interests you have. It has nothing to do with you as a person. And having this idea that Black people are supposed to have a certain language and they're supposed to speak broken English, they're supposed to speak broken English and they're supposed to, have some kind of problem. And they're supposed to have a certain behavior. Roots back to racism. It does. Saying that you act a certain way is because of your skin tone is racism in itself. But continue. Let me get through this.
Called AAVE.
Let's play a game called Should You Be Using AAVE?
Why shouldn't white people use AAVE? Let me clear the room.
All right, so what is AAVE and why are Black people gatekeepers? Let's break it down.
Let me tell you why Black people try to claim AAVE. Because everything, as I demonstrated a second ago, that they try to associate themselves with is something negative. So they always have to claim things that are bad, basically. And if a white person is speaking poorly, they better speak properly because white is good and Black is bad. That's how they feel. It's so terrible. And I've said this before. This shows how much Black people think lowly of Blackness. But yeah, continue.
Guys, before we get into this subject matter, please like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time we post a new video for you. We're constantly coming with spicy hot takes and new stories. Also, I got the subject matter from this video by a commenter on Discord under the username Ham. So I am going on Discord looking for your topics and things that you want me to discuss and talk about. You can sign up for the Discord by going to the link in the description down below. All right, guys, so AAVE. I've been hearing about this on the internet all over the place, specifically with black leftists saying, we own AAVE. White people are not allowed to use it, and you should call them out when they do. And I know what a lot of you are thinking. I don't even know what AAV is. How am I supposed to know if I'm using it? Well, the acronym stands for African American Vernacular.
How do you know you're using it? Well, if you're speaking poorly, you're probably using it. That's all it is. But anyway, continue.
English. And when we break this down and try to define it, basically people are saying that black people evolved a certain set of words, phrases, and basically a language, and is specific to black people, specifically black people who grew up in slavery, and it is evolved and changed over centuries. You'll hear black people say things like, I ain't.
I don't get that. Why they say it originated from slavery. Well, I think, honestly, if that's the case, then how come black Americans don't speak out of that, speak poorly like that? Some families don't do that. Like, my family, I wasn't taught to speak like that. My mother doesn't speak that way, I don't. You know, and it can get a little annoying because sometimes some black American people will act like everybody acts or talks like that, speaks like that, or whatever. And for me personally, I don't talk like that. Like, I've never talked like that. To me, it's a little uncomfortable too, because some black Americans will talk to other black Americans in that way. And if they sometimes say things that you may not understand, you know, I find it's harder to understand some black American people because they think it's okay to talk that way to someone who is black, but they don't realize that, no, your parents just didn't teach you how to speak. You know, that's not particularly a black thing. It's just that you weren't taught how to speak. Anyway, continue.
Finna. We finna. There's just a million things. There's a whole...
What is finna, though? What does it mean? Because I've heard finna, but what does it actually mean? Maybe she can
glossary of AAVE. If you guys want to look it up, I'll link it in the description down below. Let me just read a bit off of this glossary. If you say ax instead of ask, like I want to ask you something. If you say ate and left no crumbs, that's AAVE. If you say back on my BS, or bay, which was super common.
I ate and left no crumbs. Is that specifically to what they're saying they did, though? Because if that's the case, sometimes you eat and don't leave crumbs. So I don't know, like, that's just kind of odd to me. But anyway, continue. Let's just get through it.
If you say the bar is on the floor, if you call somebody basic, if you say you're beefing with somebody, these are things that have been deemed to be African American vernacular English. And I'm sure you guys have seen this all over the internet, but you might not have known that it was AAVE. Now, if you're still confused after my explanation, here's a crash course in African American vernacular English.
African American vernacular English. In English, hello. Hello. In African American vernacular, yo, yo, yo. In English, I'm not lying. I'm not lying. In African American vernacular, no cap. No cap. In English, trying to lie to me. Trying to lie to me. In African American vernacular, playing in my face. Stop playing in my face.
That is so weird. I've heard of some people say no cap online and stuff, and I never understand what they're saying. I just move on to something else I understand. Like, yeah, that's interesting. And playing in my face, who is supposed to understand that you're saying someone's lying to you? I thank God nobody has actually said any of those things. At least I didn't hear them say that. Sometimes you can, sometimes they kind of mumble in I don't know what kind of accent it is. I think it's like a Californian accent or something of a certain type of person. I don't know. But they will have a kind of like way that they speak. Some people. and you can't understand what they're saying. Now, this is not specific to black people, though. This is specific to what I'm thinking of is specific to people like who are born in like the hood or something, I think. Like, poorer neighborhoods, low income neighborhoods, but it's not specifically low income neighborhoods. It's like specific types of people and specific types of communities, I guess you could say. But sometimes they will say stuff and you don't understand exactly what they said, not based off of the words specifically. It could be the words, but it's more so a situation of the way they pronounced their words, added to kind of like a situation where how they ran their dialect. So like, like when somebody is a Spanish speaker, I've had this happen twice. Where I dated Hispanic men specifically, and I would notice that like when they would talk, the way they would talk, they're speaking English, but the flow of it is different. I'm saying in this situation I'm talking about, the flow was kind of different, where it's harder to track rather than slower, regular English. I'm saying in the case of Spanish, not this situation, but it was, I don't know, it's just different. Anyway, continue.
Like I said, there's that glossary that you can look up if you want to look more into this, but black people are gatekeeping this language and essentially saying that white people are not allowed to use it. I saw a girl on TikTok use the word finna, which we'll show you, and she was blasted, obliterated on the platform for using one word that was deemed to be African American vernacular English.
Now we can replace them with like balcony ticket. I was like, no, like I finna be in the pit. Like,
It's the fact that after saying that, she said in her head, I ate and left no crumbs.
Now, of course, my thoughts on this are the same as I have on any.
What does that mean, though? I don't know. Like, my problem is Black Americans who do this, they leave themselves misunderstood by everyone that doesn't speak that language. They'll say that it's a black thing, but it's only a black thing to specific black people. Some black people don't speak that way. So then they leave it where it's confusing to black people who they come out and speak that way to. See, for example, black people who will do this will usually not do that around other races of people, I don't think, but they will speak it more often to black people and expect black people to understand them. And it's like, not everyone speaks that way because not everyone came from whatever neighborhood you came from, like you can't just assume how someone grew up just off of their skin tone. But the reason they're claiming this and the reason that they assume that all black people speak this way is because they assume how black people live their lives. You assume where black people grew up. You assume black people's income bracket. You assume black people's vernacular, how well a black person is educated, how well a black person speaks. You assume that it's all bad, basically, because they're black. And who would want to perpetuate that? I don't know. Anyway, continue.
Specific language that people are trying to gatekeep or hold for themselves. You cannot keep English to yourself, a certain set of English to yourself, or any words, for that matter, to yourself or your culture. You do not own language. You do not own words, and you certainly do not have the right to go and police people who choose to use the language that you deem to be yours. And eventually, hopefully, as a generation, we will realize that that's the case, and that people should have full freedom to use whatever language they want to use. Now, aave, I don't even know if I want to admit this, I used a lot as a child, and this was definitely part of an identity crisis that I went through as a kid, specifically throughout elementary school. I was growing up biracial, not knowing whether or not I fit in with the black kids or the white kids, and I ended up having quite a large group of both sets of friends, and around white kids, I would quote unquote act white or talk white, as I've been accused of to this day of doing. And around black kids, I would use African American vernacular English because that was what was normal.
Yeah, I don't understand that. For me, growing up, mostly for me, when I was growing up, my mother, would have completely she would have had a huge issue with me speaking that way. Like, she made a big imprint on speaking English properly. Like, she likes to speak English in its extreme proper sense, basically. And specifically, it's not white people who speak proper English. White people don't speak proper English as a whole. It's so weird that people associate it with that. But yeah, when I was growing up, I was told to speak English properly and taught to, and there was an importance there. I never felt like I had to speak differently to black people. I just figured we both speak English, right? So you understand me speaking as I speak, you know? And my mother didn't let me hang around certain black kids because I guess she didn't want them to be a bad influence. And I guess she would assume if they spoke poorly that they weren't raised properly and they could be a bad influence. So I wasn't raised around them. But I did grow up around some black kids. I remember in certain activities, and they spoke just regular English. Like, they're normal speaking black people. That's why I find it so weird. Like, you think that black people don't speak normal English. I have always encountered a lot of black people who speak normal English, and some black people who don't. Just like I've seen some white people who speak normal English that's not broken and not, that bad. And then other white people who speak terrible English, That's just how it is. So I don't really get it.
How black kids spoke, and that was the language that they took on for whatever reason. And we'll get into that. So I did my phases of talking white and switching to African American vernacular English, and eventually I just realized, oh yeah, I can just talk how I want to talk and how I talk normally, and that is totally acceptable. I don't have to take on a certain identity or a certain set of language to be accepted for who I am, for what skin color I have, for anything in this world. I can just talk to people the way I want to talk to them, and that's how I came to be.
I think that's honestly a situation where sometimes I can get what she's saying there, but it's kind of like a situation where for her it's easier, but I think some black people it's not so easy. Honestly, some black people, when they just speak like normal black people, they're told that they're white or something like that. I know my mother has said that. Personally, for me, they usually will try and question what I am, or sometimes they don't recognize what I am. Like, they may think that I'm mixed or something else. But I guess for darker skinned black people, I've noticed that it's sometimes harder. But this is where the whole thing with the Oreo thing, where people say if you are a normal functioning human being, that basically you're an Oreo as a black person. You have to act all abnormally and have all sorts of bad characteristics, like speaking poorly, and other issues, basically. But let's go.
The person that I am now. But now it seems as though not only are black people gatekeeping African American vernacular English, and we'll talk about whether or not we even want to call it that anymore once we find out the actual origins of this language, they're gatekeeping it and saying it is specific to blackness. Saying things like I be, you be, You ain't, she ain't. These things are specific to black people. And let's put it out there and have it be known. This is not perfect English. It's not great English even. And if you wrote that in an essay at school and said, here's my essay, teacher, it would be sent back to you with red marks all over it because it is not proper English. Of all the things to gatekeep and say that this is specific to blackness is broken English and slang and ebonics, although it's offensive to call it that now. Is that really what we want to gatekeep as a culture and say, that's ours, and I want to take so much...
Do they ever gatekeep anything that is actually good? No. It goes along with everything else that black people of this type of caliber basically try to gatekeep and claim is theirs. They basically claim everything that is negative and self-destructive and paints black people in a negative light because the end idea of everything and the end result of everything is white is good and black is bad. Continue.
Pride in that. I get that it's fun. I get that some people view it as cool. But is that really what you want to be a representation of blackness? And let's talk about the origins of African American vernacular English, which I think a lot of people are going to be shocked to hear about. A lot of black people will say, well, it came from the